The bruise on Elena's wrist was the shape of a man's thumb, and Dante Salvatore noticed it the moment she set the coffee tray down on his desk. She tried to hide it with the cuff of her uniform, tugging the black sleeve over the yellow and purple mark. But Dante had spent 31 years reading the small tells of frightened people. A pulled sleeve, a shortened breath, eyes that would not meet his own. In his world, those tells decided who lived through the night. She poured his espresso the way she always did, 3 careful clockwise turns of the spoon, and set the saucer at the exact angle he preferred. Then she stepped back with her hands folded in front of her apron and waited to be dismissed. That was Elena Vega, 42 years old, quiet as a closed door, the woman who had cleaned the Salvatore estate for 11 years without once asking for a raise or a favor. Dante did not touch the coffee. Elena. Yes, Mr. Salvatore. Show me your arm. The color left her face in a single wave. She shook her head, a small, sharp motion, and started to back toward the study door. In 11 years, she had never once refused him a direct request. He watched her, and he did not move, and he did not raise his voice, because in his experience, volume was for weak men. Elena, show me. She lifted her sleeve. The bruise ran from the base of her thumb to the middle of her forearm, and beneath it was another bruise, older and greener, and beneath that a small round burn the size of a cigarette. Dante Salvatore, who ran 3 ports on the eastern seaboard and had ordered the deaths of 11 men that year, felt something in his chest go very still and very cold. Who did this to you? I fell, sir, on the service stairs. The marble is slick when it rains. Elena. Please, Mr. Salvatore, please. I need this position. My son starts community college in the fall. Please. He watched her for a long moment, and then he nodded once, and she fled the study on legs that would not stop shaking. Before I tell you what Dante Salvatore did next, I want you to think about something. Every one of us has walked past a person carrying something too heavy for them, and we told ourselves it was not our business. If you have ever noticed a bruise on a stranger and looked away, and it stayed with you, tap the subscribe button and tell me in the comments what you wish you had done differently. Just one honest sentence. That's all. Now let me tell you what happened when the most dangerous man in the city decided that Elena Vega was, from that morning forward, absolutely his business. He did not call his security. He did not call his lawyer. He walked out of the study through the long marble corridor, past the room where his fiancée Camilla was arranging peonies for the engagement dinner that Saturday, and he went down to the service wing where the household staff kept their lockers and their coats. He waited there until Elena came down for her afternoon break, and when she saw him standing beside her locker, she pressed a hand to her mouth. I want you to sit down, he said. She sat. I want you to understand that nothing you say to me right now will cost you your job. Nothing. If anything you say results in you needing to leave this house, you will leave with enough money to buy your son a real college, a real apartment, and a real doctor for whatever your husband has done to your body over the years I did not pay attention. Do you understand me? She started to cry, quietly, the way women cry who have been taught not to be heard. It isn't my husband, sir. Dante did not move. My husband died 6 years ago. It's my sister's boyfriend. He lives with us. He says if I leave, he'll hurt Matteo. He says he'll wait outside the college and he'll... She could not finish the sentence. She did not have to. Dante Salvatore had killed men for stealing from him. He had killed men for lying to him. He had killed one man, years ago, for putting hands on a waitress in a restaurant that happened to be under his protection. But he had never, in all his years, felt the particular quiet fury that rose in him now, because Elena Vega had been walking through his home for 11 years with cigarette burns under her sleeves, and he had never once looked. What is his name? Please, Mr. Salvatore, if he finds out I told anyone... Elena, what is his name? Rylan. Rylan Boyd. He wrote it down. He wrote down the address. He wrote down the make of the man's truck, the shift he worked at the loading dock, the bar where he drank on Thursdays. Elena answered every question in the small, flat voice of a woman who had rehearsed her own funeral more than once. She told him about the night Rylan had held a kitchen knife against Mateo's throat because the boy had spoken back at dinner. She told him about the phone he had smashed against the wall when she tried to call her cousin in Arizona. She told him about the metal box under the bed she was forbidden to touch. She told him she had been saving $40 a week for 2 years inside a hollowed-out cookbook, and it was still not enough to run. Dante wrote all of it down. When he was done, he folded the paper into his jacket pocket and told her to go home to her son and to do exactly what she did every other night. Cook dinner, wash dishes, turn off the lights, sleep in her own bed. "He'll be gone by morning," Dante said. "And you will never see him again. Do you believe me?" She looked up at him, and for the first time in 11 years, Elena Vega looked her employer straight in the face, and she nodded. That night, Dante did not sleep. He sat in the dark of his study with a glass of untouched bourbon, and he watched the phone. He thought about his mother, who had died when he was 9, and about the year before, when his father had broken her collarbone during an argument about grocery money. He thought about the way she had covered the bruise with a silk scarf and made him breakfast the next morning, smiling with the same tired smile he had, decades later, walked past on Elena Vega's face. At 2 in the morning, the phone buzzed once. A single word from his cleaner. Done. He turned off the phone, and he did not feel triumph, and he did not feel guilt, because in his mind, the arithmetic was simple. Rylan Boyd had chosen his own math the first time he laid a hand on a woman who was smaller than him. The next morning, Elena came to work with her hair combed and her sleeves rolled up. There were still bruises on her arms, but her eyes were different. Dante saw the difference before she had crossed the foyer. He nodded at her once. She nodded back. Neither of them spoke. That was the entire conversation. And that would have been the end of it, if not for what happened 3 days later on the service stairs. Elena fell. It was not a lie this time. The marble was slick with the rain that had come in through an open window on the landing, and Elena, carrying a heavy tray of glassware down to the kitchen, missed the second step and went down hard. The tray shattered. Her ankle folded under her. She hit the corner of the wall with the side of her head, and by the time the head housekeeper found her, there was a slow ribbon of blood tracking through her graying hair. Dante was in a meeting on the 3rd floor when it happened. He was told about it 40 minutes later by his fiancée, Camilla, who mentioned it the way she mentioned a stain on the carpet. "The maid fell, darling. The one you like. She's in the hospital. I've already called the agency about a temporary replacement so the dinner Saturday isn't disrupted." He looked at her across the long walnut table where they were reviewing the seating chart for their engagement dinner. Camilla Ashford, 28 years old, daughter of a shipping magnate who owned the northern half of the harbor Dante did not. Their engagement had been arranged the way most things in his world were arranged. 2 fathers, 2 glasses of scotch, 1 signature. Camilla was beautiful in the polished way of women who had never been told no. She wore her hair in a low chignon and her nails a color she called almond. She had smiled at him for 6 months, and he had smiled back, and neither of them had ever said a word about love, because neither of them had ever felt it necessary. "Which hospital?" Dante said. "I don't remember. Rossi took her." "Darling, about the seating. If we put Uncle Marco next to Senator Aldridge—" "Which hospital, Camilla?" She looked up, surprised at his tone. "St. Ambrose, I think." "Dante, it's a maid. She'll be fine. The agency can send someone by tomorrow." He stood up and walked out of the room without a word. He drove himself to the hospital, which he had not done in 6 years. He walked into the emergency wing in a black coat and black gloves and a face that made the receptionist stop typing and stand up straight. He found Elena in a bay at the far end, her ankle in a splint and a bandage around the side of her head, and he sat down in the plastic chair beside her bed and asked her one question. "How did you fall?" "The floor was wet, sir. The window on the landing." "Elena, the service window on that landing has a self-locking latch. It has not been opened in 9 years. It is painted shut." She stared at him. "Someone opened that window, Elena. Someone opened it during a rainstorm, on the landing above the service stairs, on the morning you were carrying glass. Now I want you to think, and I want you to be honest with me. Who in that house does not want you there anymore?" Elena's mouth trembled. She looked at the ceiling for a long time. "There is one person," she said. "But you won't believe me. And I don't want to lose my job. Tell me." "Miss Ashford, sir. Your fiancée. She came into the kitchen 2 weeks ago. She told me that after the wedding the household would be restructured. She said she had already spoken to the agency. She said older women like me made her uncomfortable in her own home. She said if I tried to appeal to you, she would make sure I was blacklisted from every service agency in the city, and that my son would not find work in this city either. She said her family owned enough of it to make sure of that." Dante did not move. "When I told her I had worked for you for 11 years, sir, she smiled at me. She said, 'That's exactly the problem.'" He sat there for a long moment, looking at the woman in the hospital bed who had poured his coffee for a decade, and he thought about all the small things he had refused to notice. He thought about the way Camilla's eyes had moved across Elena in the hallway last month, the way you look at a piece of furniture you plan to throw out. He thought about the small comment Camilla had made at breakfast the week before, about how the staff had grown too familiar with him, about how a proper household needed proper distance. He had let it pass because it seemed unimportant. He had been wrong. He had been wrong about a great many things. "Elena," he said, "I want you to stay in this hospital for 3 more days. I want you to tell the doctor your headache is worse than it is. I want you to say nothing to anyone from my household, anyone. I will handle the rest." "Sir, what are you going to do?" Dante Salvatore stood up and put on his gloves. "I am going to have a conversation with my fiancée, but not yet." He did not go home. He drove instead to a small office 3 miles from the estate, above a laundromat, where a woman named Inez Marino ran a private investigation firm that had been on Salvatore payroll for 16 years. He sat down across from her and slid a single sheet of paper across her desk with Camilla Ashford's name at the top and one instruction beneath it. Everything. 6 months. He wanted the phone records, the emails, the credit card statements, the security footage from the estate showing every time she had entered the service wing. He wanted to know if Camilla had acted alone or if there was another hand behind hers. Inez called him at 9 the next morning. She did not sound like a woman making small talk. "Dante, you need to see this in person." He drove to the office above the laundromat, and she laid the folder on the desk between them. Camilla had made a phone call, 3 weeks earlier, to a number registered to a shell company. The shell company was one of 4 owned by her father's second cousin, a man named Vincent Ashford, who Dante had suspected for 2 years of quietly bidding against him on a stretch of dockside warehouses that would decide who controlled the northern shipping lane for the next generation. There were emails, not many, carefully written, but enough. Camilla had been feeding Vincent information about Dante's schedule, his security rotations, the location of 2 off-books ledgers, and, most damning of all, the guest list for the engagement dinner that Saturday, on which Dante's aging father and 2 of his lieutenants were planned to be seated within 20 feet of a service entrance that had, Inez confirmed, been quietly rekeyed the week before. The engagement dinner had never been about a wedding. It had been about a room full of Salvatores, all in one place, with a door that would open from the outside. Dante sat for a long time with the folder in his hands. He thought about the peonies on the dining room table. He thought about Camilla's smile across the walnut planner. He thought about Elena Vega, whose only crime was to have worked in that house long enough to notice a woman who did not belong. Elena had not simply been an inconvenience Camilla wanted removed. Elena had been a witness Camilla could not afford, because Elena Vega, who cleaned every room in that house and moved through the halls like a ghost, would have been the first person to see a stranger walk in through a service door on a Saturday night. Dante closed the folder. Thank you, Ines. What do you want done? Nothing yet. Not with her. First, I take her legs out from under her. Then I have the conversation. He spent the rest of that day on the phone. He called his father, who listened in silence and then said one sentence. Kill nothing until we speak. He called his lawyer. He called the two men who had been placed inside Vincent Ashford's operation 18 months earlier for exactly this kind of mourning. By sunset, 3 of Vincent's warehouses were quietly under Salvatore observation. By midnight, 2 of his lieutenants had been offered a great deal of money and a great deal of protection to walk away from the family they had been sworn to, and both had accepted. By breakfast the next morning, Vincent Ashford's shipping operation was, without anyone outside 3 offices knowing it, effectively finished. Only then did Dante drive home. Only then did he walk through the front door of the estate and past the housekeeper and up the grand stairs to the east wing, where Camilla was on the phone with the florist, laughing at something about lily arrangements. She turned when he came in, still smiling, and she said, "One moment, darling," into the phone. "Hang up," Dante said. Something in his voice made her hang up. "Sit down, Camilla." "Dante, what on earth?" "Sit down." She sat. He did not sit. He stood by the window with the rain running behind him, and he looked at the woman he had been 3 weeks from marrying, and he saw her clearly for the first time. Not her beauty, not her name, not her father's shipping lanes. He saw the small, hard thing underneath, the girl who had grown up understanding that people were resources, and that resources were disposable. "Elena Vega," he said. Camilla blinked. "The maid? Dante, is this about the fall? I've already sent flowers." "You threatened her. You opened the service window on the 3rd-floor landing during a rainstorm and you left it open. You knew she would be carrying the glass down at 10 because she has done it every Tuesday for 11 years. But that is not why we are having this conversation, Camilla. That is only how I found out we were having it." Her face went through 3 expressions before it settled. Surprise, calculation, and then, slowly, something worse. Something Dante had seen on the faces of men who thought they were above consequence. "Dante," her voice smoothed itself out. "Darling, she's a housekeeper. She fell. Whatever she told you." "Vincent," she stopped. "Vincent Ashford, your father's cousin. The phone call on the 12th of last month. The email you sent him from a laptop you kept in the pool house. The service door you had rekeyed last Tuesday. The guest list you asked me to finalize by Wednesday because, and I quote, 'Your aging father should not have to travel twice.'" She did not speak. "Would you like to know, Camilla, how many of your cousin's men were on my payroll before you were even engaged to me?" She was still not speaking. 2. The answer is 2. And by tomorrow morning it will be 6, and your cousin will be signing over the deed to 3 warehouses to a company that, if he searches carefully, he will find is owned by me. So no, the engagement is not ending because of a housekeeper, Camilla. The engagement is ending because you tried to have my father shot at my own dinner table, and you thought a bruised maid was the loose thread you needed to cut. You were half right. She was the loose thread. But she was mine. She was on her feet now, her voice climbing. "You cannot possibly be serious. Do you know what my father will do?" "Your father will do nothing, because your father will spend the next 6 months trying to save what your cousin just lost. And when he calls, which he will, I will tell him what his daughter tried to do inside my house. And then your father will do the same arithmetic every man in our world does. He will cut his loss." She stared at him. And then, because she was still Camilla Ashford, and she had never in her life not gotten the last word, she said the thing that ended it completely. "She's a maid, Dante. She's 40 years old and she scrubs floors. What did you think? That you were going to marry her instead?" Dante Salvatore looked at his fiancée with the flat, quiet eyes that men in his world had learned to fear, and he said, "No, I am going to make sure she never has to be afraid in her own life again, which is more than I was going to do for you. Now get out of my house. You have 1 hour." She got out in 40 minutes. He did not watch her leave. He went instead to his study and he made 3 phone calls. The first was to his lawyer. The second was to his father, whose voice on the other end of the line held a long silence and then said only, "Understood, son," and hung up. The third was to St. Ambrose Hospital, where he arranged for Elena Vega's medical bills to be paid in full and for her to be transferred to a private room until she was ready to be discharged. Then he sat in the study and he thought about the 11 years he had walked past a woman who was drowning inside her own uniform, and he understood that the cost of not looking was always paid by someone else. If he had looked 6 months ago, when Camilla first walked into his house, he might have seen what Elena had seen. That some people came into a home not to live in it, but to hollow it out. 3 weeks later, Elena Vega came back to the estate on a Monday morning. Her ankle was still in a light brace, and there was a small scar at her hairline that would never quite disappear. Dante met her at the door himself. He handed her an envelope. Inside was a letter and a check. The letter told her that her position as head of household was hers if she wanted it. Not maid, head of household. A salary that would put her son through a full 4-year university and a graduate program after. A pension. A written guarantee, signed by Dante himself, that no member of his family, business, or future household would ever again threaten her or her child. She could accept the position or she could accept the check and start her own life somewhere quiet. Either way, the money was hers. Elena read the letter twice. Her hand was steady this time. She looked up at him. "Mr. Salvatore, why?" He thought about the question for a long time before he answered. "Because 11 years ago you started pouring my coffee, and I never once said thank you. Because a week ago you came into my study with a bruise on your wrist, and I finally saw it. Because the woman I was going to marry looked at you like you were furniture, and she almost put a bullet through my father's chair. Elena, I am not a good man. I have done things in my life that will not be forgiven. But I am the man in this house, and no one who works in this house, no one who lives in this city under my name, is ever going to be hurt again for being smaller than someone else, not while I am breathing." Elena folded the letter. She folded the check. She put them both in the pocket of her coat. "I will stay," she said, "but not as head of household, Mr. Salvatore. As a person who works here, that is enough for me." "Then that is what you'll be. But the salary stays, and the guarantee stays, and your son goes to whatever college he wants." She nodded. She did not thank him. He did not want her to. Some debts do not get paid with words. She poured his coffee that morning the way she had always poured it. 3 careful clockwise turns of the spoon. She set the saucer at the exact angle he preferred. Then she stepped back with her hands folded in front of her apron, and she waited to be dismissed. But this time, when he looked up at her, he said the words he had never once said in 11 years. "Thank you, Elena." She smiled at him. It was a small smile, and it was tired, and it was the first smile he had ever seen on her face. "You're welcome, Mr. Salvatore." She left the study. He drank the coffee. It was, as it had always been, exactly the way he liked it. Outside the tall windows, the rain had stopped. The estate was quiet. Somewhere in the city, a shipping magnate was writing an angry letter that would never be sent. Somewhere in a small apartment across the river, a young man named Matteo was opening a letter from a university and holding his breath. Somewhere in the service wing, a woman with a scar at her hairline was hanging her coat on a hook and beginning a shift that would not, this time, cost her a single bruise. Dante Salvatore set the cup down on the saucer. He thought about the arithmetic of his life. He thought about the men he had killed and the men he had spared and the woman he had almost married, and he understood something he had not understood before. Power was not the ability to hurt people. Power was the choice not to, and the choice not to had to be made every single day, in small ways, at the edges of your own attention, in the moment when a woman pulls her sleeve down over a bruise and you decide this time that you are going to see her. He picked up his pen. He had work to do. But the house, for the first time in a long time, felt like a house and not a fortress. The peonies in the dining room had been thrown out. The seating chart had been burned. The service door on the east wing had been rekeyed one more time, this time by his own locksmith, and the key had been given to Elena. She would decide from now on who walked through it. He did not know what came next. He did not know what shape a life looked like when it was not built entirely out of fear. He was 51 years old, and he had never lived one, and he did not know if he was capable of it now. But he thought about the woman with the scar at her hairline, and the young man with the university letter, and the small, quiet decision to see something instead of walking past it. And he thought, for the first time in a very long time, that perhaps the arithmetic of his life could still be rewritten. Not undone, never undone, but rewritten, one small, honest morning at a time. He picked up the coffee. It was still warm. He drank it slowly.